What if I told you that there's a whole bunch of DoD marketplaces that already exist, and it's probably the best way to get your tech in front of the DoD? Well, that's the case. You'll hear people talk about these marketplaces as front doors or ecosystems, but they are all the same and completely different at the same time. They're the same in the sense that they're supposed to be a collection of companies and opportunities that are available for the DoD to access and review all in one spot to make it easy for the warfighter to then understand what is available, and then easy for the companies as a single point to interface with a given set of warfighters, given set of units. Where this theory breaks down is that there are a whole bunch of marketplaces, and it kind of confuses all the different entities that are involved. The government customers are confused about which marketplaces to use, and the companies are confused about which marketplaces they should be applying to be the most effective. So we'll start out historically. There's been marketplaces for a long time, and I've always considered GSA Schedules to be like the foremost marketplace. They've been around for a long time. You can get your stuff available on the schedule to be purchased. And normally you're using a GSA schedule for something like IT equipment or licenses. And there's a whole bunch of people selling similar stuff to what you might be offering. And you're on the schedule, and it's a MAC award IDIQ, so a multiple award contract vehicle. And GSA has a whole bunch of these different vehicles that are available. And it's a way to get your stuff out there so that if a unit has funding at the end of the year and they have to buy software licenses, or they got to buy IT or anything else that's purchased off the GSA schedules, it's available to be purchased. Now, that's like the baseline, but it's the one that's been around the longest. You'll see, and you've heard me speak about Tradewinds solution marketplace in the past. I consider that to be the premier marketplace because it allows us to buy stuff quickly, stacking 3 different authorities: Broad Agency Announcement Authority, OT Authority, and CSO Authority. These 3 authorities allow us to do almost any type of government contracting. The only type of contracting you can't really do with Tradewinds is a cost type contract that's FAR-based. So anything else is on the table. Now, in between a GSA schedule and Tradewinds, you have other entities that are trying to enter the marketplace space, or things that should be reasonably considered a marketplace. I would consider DSIP a marketplace. It creates a collection of companies. All of these companies are SBIR awardees. And in that marketplace, you know that if there's a company with an award, there's an ability to go direct to that purchaser. Now, I will be the first to tell you that the DSIP portal and the way the DSIP marketplace is structured and the user experience is terrible, but it's something that you should be aware of. If you apply to a SBIR and you're selected, you're now in that DSIP database as a SBIR awardee, and the savvy government offices that know how to leverage this, they're tapping into that market and looking for companies that they can go direct to for faster awards. Okay. Now you have DARPA and some other organizations coming out with their version of a marketplace, and it's very similar to how Tradewinds functions. Tradewinds is video-based. DARPA's ERIS marketplace, also video-based. They vary on the length of videos. Tradewinds is 5 minutes. I think for DARPA's, I think they're allowing for 7 minutes. But the point is, they're trying to make a nice place for companies to be able to market what it is, the technology that they're bringing to the table, what problem they're solving, and allow an easy consumption of that information for the DoD end user. All right. If you look at what DSIP does, all it does is list the companies and might have a synopsis of the project. Far less consumable for the end user. And DSIP has over 30 years, probably close to 40 years of its existence. So there's a ton of data there to sift through, and it makes it really challenging and overwhelming for the end user to understand exactly what it is in their marketplace. But Ensign, other groups, they've all come out with different front door pathways. AFRL, has probably had 3 or 4 different front doors over the course of the years. But all this leads to a little bit of confusion on where should an entity go to apply for their marketplace and which marketplace is going to have the biggest impact. In my view of the world, if you go out for any marketplace, it has to be tied to the customer base that you're looking for. So if you're trying to access DARPA, there's a marketplace for DARPA. If you're trying to access broad DoD and you fit inside some AI technology buckets, Tradewinds is the right path for you. If you're out there trying to continue in the cyberspace, go leverage the DSIP portal, and you'll be available through that pathway. The problem with this is it creates a lot of confusion still from a company saying, hey, I only have so many resources. I'm a small business. I can't apply to all these different marketplaces. Where there's a new concept that's evolving and no one's nailed it yet. DIU's maybe taking a hack at it, Defense Innovation Unit. They're trying to create what effectively is a mall. So you walk into the mall and you get access to all the different marketplaces that the DoD has. I don't know that DIU is going to land on it since the recent news. They just got moved inside R&E, just like the CDAO did. When these organizations move and they lose some of their leadership, a lot of times they lose direction and steam. So I think there's a ripe opportunity. Maybe Supersitter is going to take this on, the OSD Supersitter office, maybe some other organizations, but that mall concept of being able to bring all of the DoD marketplaces under one roof and allow a customer, be it or any stakeholder, normally the companies, to come in and submit once. They're all going to have different requirements. So your one submittal may be applicable for 2 or 3 marketplaces, but you may not hit the requirements for the 3rd, 4th, 5th marketplace. So understanding what those different requirements are for the solicitations, it can seem overwhelming, but it's really important to understand them because they are actual solicitations that the government issues. They will all be posted on SAM.gov in some capacity, but you have to be compliant with the solicitation to be able to have your product or service listed on that marketplace. So it is going to be different. The burden is on the companies and it's something you'll have to work through, but I'm firmly in the camp of we got to find a way to make it easier for companies to understand what marketplaces exist, and we got to make it easier for the DoD end user, that warfighter, to understand where they can go and find cool technologies. Even if you are available on a DARPA marketplace, it doesn't mean that you're excluded. If you're a warfighter that's, let's say, in the mobility command, from leveraging that technology, you just have to you have to be aware that it exists. And our warfighters are focused on their day-to-day activities, acquisition being an afterthought in many cases. If we had some type of mall infrastructure where you could visibly see all the different marketplaces and quickly leverage some AI tools to search them, I think it would be a game changer for the warfighter. And I think it would be a game changer for companies. At a minimum, it would give people a more equitable playing field about knowing which marketplaces really do exist. Now, if you are of the traditional mindset that these marketplaces are fly by night and people are leveraging them in not the most efficient manner, they're using them to skirt competition, they're using them to get around the rules. That's true in some cases. But as a government and as a country, we have to allow for the risk trade-off of someone is misusing a marketplace to go faster versus we got the technology, something fielded much faster. I tend to believe that the faster we get products fielded, even if it means that process is a little less fair or could be a little less fair, is a better end result for everybody involved. Now, if you're the company that feels like you got slighted, that's unfortunate. But in the marketplace, the regular marketplace, the commercial marketplace, this happens all the time. When companies compete commercially in the marketplace, they're doing all sorts of stuff to get an asymmetric advantage over you. They're marketing directly to the consumer. They're providing all sorts of tricks and techniques to get your attention. They're creating content. They're doing all sorts of different stuff so that you will buy their product at the end of the day. The DoD is no different. You have to build relationships with your end user and your customer, and you have to find ways to do that because on these marketplaces, you can go direct in many cases to the company you want. The marketplaces lower the barrier to entry because it already had, in many cases, they already have a competition complete. Now with GSA Schedules, normally they'll compete for like an LPTA or lowest price technically acceptable type of an award. But for Tradewinds and some of these other marketplaces, DARPA's marketplace, the competition has already occurred, which makes them very attractive for the government because they've already done half of the acquisition process. And it allows them to effectively pick the company or the technology or the solution that fits their needs, because the competition piece has already been checked. Now the only part that's left is a negotiation. Now, you might have heard people talk about OT consortiums or other transaction consortiums. These have been around in their current form since approximately 2016. And I can tell you I was an early adopter of the OT consortium model, but over time, I've seen these models kind of fail. There are a handful of consortium-based OTs that exist. I'm really not a fan of any of them. I can talk about each one of them individually, but what I've seen as the mega drawback is that the consortium manager, normally a 501c3 type of entity, doesn't provide a whole bunch of value and gets a pretty healthy scrape off all the money that goes into these consortiums. And early on, they were being used to get to entities to make sure the money was going to certain entities, and the consortium managers were vectoring those funds. It's a way around the FAR-based rules to maybe do some of that. And again, if that's getting us faster results to the warfighter, it's not inherently bad. The problem that I have with the OT consortiums is that I believe the scrape that these consortium managers are taking off the top is exorbitant and way more money than what it costs for them to actually administer their consortiums. So I'm much more partial to using a marketplace like Tradewinds over some generic OT consortium. And there's a lot of ones that have been around for a long time. Some of them have pay models where you pay a nominal fee to be involved with. Other consortium OTs are free. But again, any money that a unit or the warfighter puts onto that consortium manager is taking a chunk of that funding to go do awards. And sometimes I've heard of these numbers being in excess of 20% of the total dollars that are put on to the OT consortium, which is by any stretch of the imagination, exorbitant dollars. So I would much rather find a way to go direct to the companies that I know can deliver and not have to pay that fee. So that's where you get back into which pathways, which different marketplaces allow you to have that direct acquisition authority. So far, Tradewinds is still winning the day. DARPA is using those same authorities and they're riding lockstep. The next question is going to be adoption and how quickly they can get assimilation of a bunch of different units to use these tools. Now, what do you do if you're a company, you're on the different marketplaces, you figured out how to get that piece of the problem accomplished? Now you have to find a way to actually get the end users to know you exist. The marketplace is a great first step, but it doesn't supplant the need to make human connection. Just like in the commercial marketplace, you are selling to individuals. These people have desires, they have ideas on what the product should be, and they are subject to all the same human emotions that a commercial marketplace consumer is subject to. So understand what those emotions are, be helpful to them, find ways to connect your product to their needs, and don't be afraid to show up in person for events. In-person matters. If you don't have a travel budget for your company or for your small business, or if you're not flying to all the different events where you know the government people will be, you're making a mistake. You have to find a way to get in front of these people. You have to find a way to build relationships with the decision makers on the acquisition side of the house, because at the end of the day, they are the ones that control what acquisition strategy they deploy. Are they going to go to a marketplace and buy a company, technology that they've heard of exists and it's on the marketplace? I've done that countless times. I'm going to avoid competition, an additional long drawn out competition. When I say competition, even though the marketplace is a technical competition, I'm going to avoid the long drawn out competition because speed matters. So if speed matters to me, it probably matters to a lot of other acquisition officers as well. In this new administration, they are pushing the marketplace concept because it does allow us to go faster. Now, the risk is I'm just going to the companies I know and I'm not finding new stuff on the marketplace. And it's a risk, but I am getting stuff to the warfighter faster, which is the ultimate goal, and I think outweighs the risk. Now, if you are a company that feels like you're not getting, a fair shake on the marketplace, or no one's seeing your stuff on the marketplace, look in the mirror and ask, what are you doing to get in front of these end users that are buying the product or service that you're offering? there is a way to get in front of them. There is a way to be helpful to them. You have to dial in what that is and invest the money and time to be useful to those end users, and they will find you. Those conversations are easy to have, but it doesn't start with a sales conversation. It starts with what are your problems? How can I help you? And being truly helpful and desiring to solve a problem, not desiring to sell a product or service. So with that, I'll say marketplaces are here to stay. They are not going anywhere. The new administration absolutely loves them. And if you are not on the marketplaces, step one is go figure out the ones that you're going to go play in. And those should align to the end users that you want to support, because each one of those marketplaces has a little bit of tailoring to their community. So go do the research, do the hard work, figure out which marketplaces you want to support, and get onto those marketplaces. It's imperative. I can tell you, as a former evaluator of the Tradewinds marketplace, we wanted to get as many companies as possible onto that marketplace, which means get them through the competition stage to the point where the evaluators, after they would finish evaluating, would give really great feedback to the companies that didn't make it. So they can go and submit again the next month till they had a great video. And the reason they did that is because they wanted the most optionality for the end users, and they wanted to have high quality videos for the companies. These videos might be the only access point that an end user has to your technology. So they want to make it the best for both parties involved. But they are actively trying to get as many companies as possible. DARPA has a very similar approach. They're actively giving you feedback. They want you to be successful. In other cases, getting on a schedule or getting into some of these OT consortiums, it can be a bit of a black box. What happens post getting on the schedule or getting into the OT consortium? But for the newer version of these marketplaces, I can't stress enough. Take the time, make the relationships, get out there, and then start selling. If you have a SBIR as well, don't be afraid to talk about that in your marketplace videos. Every time you do an award, you have a little bit of say with the contracting officer and the acquisition team about what is the best pathway. Now, ultimately, the government will decide what they believe the best pathway is for the acquisition, but they may not be fully aware of some of the acquisition pathways that are available to you. So if they find you through Tradewinds and they say, hey, I would love to go put you on contract to use whatever product or service you have, and you know you have a SBIR that derives from extends or completes that same work that they're trying to do, you should have the conversation with the contracting officer and just tee it up. Hey, what if we did this as a SBIR Phase III? The reason for that is you have unique data rights as a SBIR holder that you would not have as a traditional awardee off of Tradewinds. So if the work derives from extends or completes a SBIR Phase III, I can still go direct to you, or I will go direct to you, but your SBIR data rights will apply, which are the closest to limited data rights that the government offers when there's any type of mixed funding or government funding involved. Short of that, say the government pays for your entire development of whatever product or service that they're trying to buy, those data rights will be unlimited data rights for the government. If there's mixed funding, in the instance where you developed some of the product or service on your own dime and the government put money in as well, that's called government purpose rights. Those rights last for 5 years, and then they convert to unlimited rights for the government. And a lot of times people don't fully understand what these data rights mean for them, but unlimited rights for the government allow the government to take your technology, your product, and effectively give it to someone to go do commercial sales with it that have nothing to do with the government. That sounds like a big deal. We don't do it that often, but it is a right the government has, and that's kind of what makes doing acquisition with the government different. If you have government purpose rights, those purpose rights last for 5 years and then convert to unlimited rights, and they function where the government can take your technology and give it to anyone else to compete for a government activity. So it's us to have a government purpose. Again, it sounds kind of scary. Someone's going to take everything you developed and put it over in the marketplace so that others can compete. We don't do it a whole bunch. But in critical technology areas where we know we need to have a robust commercial marketplace, it happens. We know we need to have competition inside government. It does happen, but very rarely. The final form of rights is limited rights. And when you talk about limited rights, that's when something was developed wholly at your own expense, the company's expense. The government only has a right to use it for that project. It doesn't have the right to go use it and give it to others without your knowledge to go compete on projects. SBIR data rights are the closest thing to limited rights that you're going to be able to stick with the government. So I would highly encourage you to always vector towards a SBIR if they found you through Tradewinds or something else, if you have a SBIR that fits. If you don't have it, Tradewinds or the DARPA Marketplace are the next best solutions. So please get on your marketplaces. If you like what you heard today, you can subscribe and find me on Instagram at Vince_Pecoraro. If you shoot me a message on there, I can send you my direct acquisition playbook free, my gift to you. And thanks for spending time with me today. Bye.